Clock on my end, and so we are going to get started. My name is Seth Green, and I lead the Baumhart Center here at Loyola University Chicago. And we are enormously grateful to have you here because this institute is truly at the center of our mission and of our work. And what I want to do is briefly introduce you to our center, tell you why we've decided to launch this DEI Institute, and then I'm going to turn it over to three people. Emily Nordquist, who is the phenomenal senior program manager at the Baumhart Center, who has spearheaded this effort, alongside incredible faculty, and you'll hear from Amita Shetty, who is one of those phenomenal faculty. And then you're going to hear from Corey, who is one of our phenomenal coaches. And most important of all, we are really eager to answer your questions. And so we will just talk for about 20 to 25 minutes collectively, and then we'll have about 20 to 25 minutes to answer your questions and be done by 1:50 to give you a little break before what I'm sure many of you have, which is your next Zoom at 2 p.m. So let me just tell you a little bit about the Baumhart Center. We are a center at Loyola University Chicago that seeks to integrate business strategy and social purpose. While we are just 3 years into our mission and charge as a center, we are part of a university that has 150 years of leadership at this intersection. And our aim has been to really take that incredible leadership and bring it to practitioners to accelerate impact in the world. In particular, one note of pride for us is that our business school was actually part of a ranking that was done by the Financial Times in 2019 that looked specifically at social purpose in business education. And there were 4 schools in the world that were selected for excellence in 3 or more categories. And we were enormously proud to be one of them, alongside UC Berkeley and then 2 schools in Europe. And I share that because while this particular institute is new, and I'll talk more about how we got here, we are enormously proud to be part of a university that has a mission of justice, that is a leading top 5 university for sustainability, that has one of the most dynamic and important access to education efforts in the country through Rupe College, and through our business school that has had a long time commitment to moral education and to using the positive power of business. Let me tell you a little bit about what we do as a center. We have a 2-pronged approach. We believe that if we're going to change the future of business to be more inclusive and equitable, we need to start with leaders, because ultimately leaders and their purpose define how companies act and how others within those companies are ultimately charged to have impact. And so we prepare leaders for impact. That's obviously part of what we're aiming to do with this institute. Other initiatives that we've already launched, we have the first of its kind MBA program in the country called Baumhart Scholars that is exclusively for people who want to thrive at the intersection of profit and purpose. And we've had just an incredible first cohort and now second cohort of leaders who are truly game-changing, from leaders at McDonald's who are driving sustainability all the way over to leaders in the social sector who are finding ways to build new cross-sectoral partnerships in this moment to get people back to work. We also have a phenomenal program in leadership development for people in the nonprofit sector who are looking for business education. And then we have a social responsibility certificate that has trained more than 40 practitioners, and that is really moving the needle in social responsibility in corporations. We also believe that we need to change the broader norms in business. And so part of our goal is to change the people that are rising in business, because we believe that that is part of the equation. We also think that we need to change some of the framework. And our big vision, shared by others, though we are trying to get more and more seriousness around this, is to move from a shareholder-only approach to a stakeholder approach, where we're really valuing all of the people that make long-term success for business. And so we launched this year before COVID, thankfully, so we could have a large in-person gala and celebration, an Innovator in Social Business Awards. And there were 3 awardees, and we were lucky to have CEOs from these companies who were part of the awards and who really served as role models for our efforts in terms of what business can look like. Chobani, which is a proven leader in diversity, equity, and inclusion. About 1/3 of their workforce are immigrants, and they've set up intentionally to really leverage that as a core part of their business strength. The person who joined us, Grace Simmons, who is their Chief People and Culture Officer, talked about how that was their competitive advantage in terms of why they were innovating much faster than others, because they were really leveraging their human capital. We have others here that are equally relevant for environmental and for multiple bottom line reasons. Let me just briefly tell you why we came to the DEI Institute, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Emily Nordquist. So we as a business school have been looking at how we can play a bigger role in really impacting what we see to be the systemic inequities within the business community. I'm a professor who teaches on these topics, and one of the first things I do with my students is have them read about 1619 and begin to understand that while we often think of slavery as a government decided institution, government allowed it, but it was actually a trade. And the first businesses, and they were businesses, carried slaves here, and those were some of the earliest business ventures that took place in our country. And the systems that underpinned a lot of that, well, obviously they look very different today. There's a lot of racism that remains in those systems, and we go through in the class kind of how to understand all of those issues and how it manifests, even though we've obviously changed the laws that surround those exact issues. And as we looked at these issues, and we looked at many of the issues that frankly have become much more visible in the last month and the last 3 months as COVID has brought visibility, we realized that we needed to go deeper, that we needed to be able to really take a step back and be able to bring business through a process of understanding the inequities and then coming up with enterprise-wide strategies. We also felt like we needed to better unlock the business case. So the unbelievable opportunity here is that it's not only the right thing to do in terms of overcoming what has been marginalization, but it's actually the right thing for business. And there's been a lot of studies, and I'm sure you've seen them by McKinsey and others, that have really shown that, and it's not surprising, when you actually access the full potential of human capital versus what is truly only a slice of it because of different biases, you actually come out on top because you have greater innovation, greater risk management, greater points of view that lead to greater decision making. And so we really felt like this was a perfect opportunity for us to both be for justice, but also for impact in business in a way that really aligned with what we saw as a strong business case. And so we began planning this a year ago. Obviously, it has come in terms of the launch and announcement at a moment where thankfully there's even greater focus on these issues, and we're grateful. But for us, this is a topic that preceded and certainly continues long beyond the current moment. And so we hope that this can really make an impact in a long-term way in how we think about creating pipelines and creating opportunity within business. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who can actually walk you through the details of what we're building.
Perfect. Thank you, Seth, and thanks everyone for joining today. I know I've interacted with many of you one-on-one, but it's great to have you all here and interested in the Institute. So the DEI Leadership Institute is really designed to be a true cohort experience, and it's for leaders who are really committed to moving the needle within their companies. So the participants who will join the Institute will receive a certificate in diversity and inclusion leadership from Loyola University Chicago, but they will also have this opportunity to really engage their company in this kind of work by bringing up to 3 company leaders with them to participate in the deep dive workshops. And Seth, if you go to the next slide, Seth already touched on much of the why behind our decision to launch this institute, but I just want to say that while there's a lot of incredible work already taking place in other sectors and other spaces to advance DEI, the reality is that we are not realizing the potential of diversity in our workplaces. And although we have, especially now, begun to have some meaningful conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even have conversations about the impact on the bottom line when we invest in DEI, we're still seeing that 78% of employees say that they work at organizations that lack diversity in leadership positions. So while deep commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is the right thing to do, as Seth mentioned, it's also really a business imperative. So a big focus for the Institute is how do we develop DEI strategies that are truly aligned with our company's mission, our company values, and enterprise-wide strategy and our operations. And on the next slide, I'm going to go into kind of the 4 pillars that are helping us to guide the Institute experiences. So we've spent the last year really connecting with a number of DEI leaders throughout Chicago and beyond. And through those kind of one-on-one conversations and design workshops, we came to understand where we as a business school might be able to add meaningful value and expertise to the DEI space. And these are sort of the four pillars that we came up with and felt like would help to focus, where we spend our time in the Institute and kind of what we're offering through Baumhart Center. The first is developing a deeper understanding of the business imperative and going deeper into understanding the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. The second one is encouraging executive commitment. And this is really through the company participation, being able to bring 3 company leaders into the Institute to participate alongside you. And also the development of clear strategies, right, that help to align DEI strategy with enterprise level strategy. If we can communicate that and create a strategy that makes clear sense, we believe that we can get to greater executive commitment. The third pillar is building a team of cross-functional stakeholders who truly hold the power to move the needle. So I think too often we see that diversity, equity, and inclusion work kind of sits with your CHRO or might sit with a chief diversity officer. But our belief is that this is something that needs to be operationalized. It needs to work across functions at all levels within the company. And so the Institute is really designed to engage those cross-functional leaders in a meaningful way and create some alignment in terms of understanding, the strategy today and where you would like to grow your company in this space. And then lastly, we really wanted to inspire peer and cross-industry learning so that we could advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in every single workplace. And it's not something, that we believe you should be competing on. It's something where we are all better off if we're investing in DEI across sector and across industry. And our belief is that participants will get just as much out of the cohort from their peers as they will from the incredible coaches, guest speakers, and faculty members that we've brought on to join this Institute. So as I said, these are kind of the 4 pillars that help to guide the experience, and it's kind of what we believe will truly make this Institute unique for people who are committed to the work. So I'll touch on the structure of the Institute, but also know that I'm more than happy to answer specific questions during Q&A in this session or even schedule a virtual coffee with folks. The participants will go through 4 deep dive workshops where they are going to discuss kind of 4 different high-level topics, and it gets more specific in terms of curriculum, and I'll let Amita touch on that. But they'll talk about business and society and the role that business must play to advance equity, inclusive leadership and unconscious bias, strategy and really kind of change management and implementing these strategies, and lastly, leveraging and positioning diverse talent for leadership. So we're really leaning on our centers of excellence at Baumhart Center as well as at Quinlan to really help facilitate these workshops. And we've brought on external strategists and DEI leaders to do that work alongside us. And then alongside the workshops, the company lead will also be able to participate in 4 one-on-one coaching sessions. And in those sessions, they'll have the opportunity to tailor and deepen their own understanding of their role in this work and where they might position their companies to truly drive impact for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then, of course, we have the incredible group of leaders who will be part of the Institute. This is an intentionally large team. We felt like we needed to have diverse perspectives from across industry, sector, and experience to really help companies lead in this space. So we're excited about everybody that has kind of come on board. And we're especially grateful to leaders like Connie Lindsay, Gloria Castillo, Lyndon Taylor, and Terry Peterson, and many others for their incredible support of the Institute to date and for their willingness to be a part of the cohort and in sharing their leadership and kind of fireside chats with us. So this is the incredible team that we have brought on, and we're truly excited. And so now you'll have the opportunity to hear from one of these incredible leaders, Amita Shetty. She is one of the faculty members who will be joining the Institute. And she will share with you now a bit about her approach to facilitation for this kind of work.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for the great background and introduction, Seth and Emily. Obviously, when your first slide starts with "We lead with purpose," it is hard not to join that platform and be part of that mission. So I'm honored to be part of this group. And what I thought I'd do is touch a little bit about sort of the key principles that the curriculum will be based on. And this, some of this commentary comes from my actual experience. So my last role, I used to work for a large publicly traded company in Chicago, and I led the diversity charter at the company. And as Emily mentioned, this was not necessarily a role that was undertaken by a separate department. I was the head of business development, and for me to lead this charge was extremely important, and the opportunity was ripe. So through those experiences, as well as conversations with lots of peers in the industry, and going through the journey of figuring out what works, what doesn't work, is how this curriculum will be shared with this group. So just a quick background of some of the beliefs. Irreplaceable notions are ingrained in our brains, and our brains will do what it takes to work against our very best intentions. So if we bring two of a particular demographic into any organization, and whether it's two women, two African Americans, two Asians, two engineers, two folks from different socioeconomic backgrounds, I can keep going. The belief oftentimes is something magical will happen, and it is assumed that the group will integrate on its own. That's one assumption, which is flawed. The second thing that sometimes ends up being used as a tactic to address the integration is organizations will launch into expensive and ineffective unconscious bias training and assume that everyone's intentions, the best intentions, will be overridden by an investment in training. And if you look at data and statistics, there's been enough studies done with both mid and large size companies where the effect actually has been the opposite. Companies that have undertaken the solo unconscious bias training approach, they've seen a drop in participation of women, individuals of color, and various other demographics that are part of or should be part of our talent pipeline. So the issue isn't that there are differences. The issue is how we evaluate people unconsciously. The other challenge is when we think about diversity, we stop at the visible differences of people. That could be color, background, gender, et cetera, versus cognitive differences, which are harder to detect. What I mean by cognitive differences are, what is the perspective you bring to the table? And number two, how do you process information? Those are obviously underneath the surface and much harder to detect. So how do you truly bring not only diversity to the table, how is it represented, but how do you remove those cultural barriers so people don't feel the need to conform, because conformity leads to loss of that true diversity where people bring different ways of solving a problem, different beliefs to the discussion. So that's sort of the foundational element of why we need to be more strategic, more bold about this curriculum. And if you go to the next page, building on top of that, these people's perception come from seeing. Seeing is believing. We've heard that phrase many a times. Since we can't expose everyone to those counter stereotypical examples, that's just too much work to do on this planet. What we need to think about is design that counter a gut, which is really the gut is an output of our experiences. So how do we come up with these structural designs, the systemic ways that actually have measurable results? So really it's how do you lean on the strength of a process, lean on the strength of a system, a structure to outwit an individual's beliefs. And when we think about how do complex problems get addressed in any organization, when you have a failure in a business practice, we don't just stop at training people and hope that things work out. There's something a little bit more systemic than that. So for example, if I go back to the liquidity crisis around the 2008-2009 timeframe, there was a pretty massive undertaking going down from the Federal Reserve down to the organizational and individual level to think about policies, programs, practices, training, change management. There was quite a big undertaking to address problems like that. Financial management, same thing. You've got KPIs that people look at. You've got audit procedures just to make sure you've got the right checks and balances in place. In marketing, we've got A/B testing, all of these things that were taught in business school. But the question is, when it comes to people and how people unconsciously evaluate others, why are we not using the same structures, the same systems, the same methodology? So a lot of what we'll touch on, what are those different practices that are worked? Change management is a pretty big principle that will apply here. We've Organizations often address it in a centralized way, in which case you have program managers, but many will do decentralized way of change management such that change is part of the everyday workflow. So we'll talk about the different methods and what's been effective. The last bullet on this page, which is very critical, is there is no silver bullet to this problem. If it was that easy, it would have been done a long time ago, which is why we've got this amazing forum to really not only talk about what are some of these techniques that have worked, but more importantly, talk about the local context. Where do you come from? Where do you sit in the organization? Where do you see the opportunity? And how do we apply some of these bold, creative methods to your organization and really start honing in on that? So if we go to the next page, one of the methods that I've seen worked effectively is the idea of small wins, which is true for everything. When you're trying to get to a transformative level change, it is very hard to undertake it all day one and hope that it works out in a very short time frame. Change is hard. People resist change for a variety of different reasons. So how do we design these small wins, which starts with figure out where to start? Just like any other business problem, collect data, formulate the problem statement, make sure that people are bought in around that problem statement. Number two, consider the target of change. What are you trying to change? Think locally. Think down to the organizational, functional, individual level. Identify where the problem exists, but also where will change likely stick. Engage key stakeholders. Make sure that you've got that cross-functional buy-in, which is what Emily touched on a few minutes ago. And then really evaluation, which we do for everything that in a business setting, which is you measure pre-change and you measure post the structures being put into place or the structures being modified. So really measure and hold people accountable to the process. So this is just a way of thinking about trying to take something that's so big and sometimes seems so overwhelming and getting it to bite-sized pieces, and the culmination of which really leads to a change in a workplace, in an environment where people truly thrive. I using one of Jim Collins' BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. If I were to say what could be a BHAG coming out of this institute, it's one, find ways to hurry up history. People are slow to change. How do we hurry up history? And then number two, how do we become the architects of universal design, where we can fulfill that first principle of design for equity and social equity for all? So I would say I'd leave you with, there's lots to be discussed, there's lots to learn, there's lots to design, but really the opportunity to be part of this this sort of architecting of this universal design is really exciting, and I look forward to playing that role.
Thank you so much, Amita. And everyone, that is just one of the faculty members for the Institute. So there is lots more kind of where that came from. But thank you, Amita, for kind of sharing your approach to teaching in the Institute. I'm going to turn it over now to Cora Flournoy. He is one of the coaches that will be joining the Institute, and he's going to share a little bit more about his approach to coaching, especially in the DEI space.
Thank you so much. And hello to everyone. Good afternoon. So first, a little bit of my background. So I am a principal partner in a company called Creative Outreach Consulting. It's been around since 1996. And we do leadership development and diversity training and initiatives. And so this is a space I've been in for a while. And for the last couple of years, I've also been the global head of inclusion and diversity for Groupon. And so in the recent time, in my time at Groupon, I went through the process of becoming a certified coach. And so if we go to the next slide, I thought it'd be great to talk about what is coaching, because people have heard the term coaching many times, and often coaching can be confused with other things. So I want to kind of really just spend a few minutes really defining what is coaching. So the International Coach Foundation defines coaching as it's about partnering with a client, a thought-provoking creative process that really inspires a person to maximize their personal and professional potential. And so anyone who's been through this similar program of being trained to be coached, these are the foundations of what it's about. It's really about inspiring the person. So you as a person who I will be coaching, and we also have another person, Heather Sattler, who's also gone through the exact same training and certification that I've gone through. It's about really helping people to own whatever that challenge or problem you're going through in life, and to work through that problem to get towards a solution. And the additional component is that both of us were also certified through a company called Coach Diversity. And the interesting thing about that is, not only are we trained as coaches, but we really have been trained to really work through some of the issues that people who are marginalized who come from marginalized communities also bring into this space when they're trying to make decisions or trying to work through life's problems. Because, you know, it's one thing to deal with a barrier or challenge. It's another thing that because you come from a marginalized community, they may also come into play. So it's what's keeping you from progressing. Also part of your ethnicity or your gender or sexual orientation or where you were born and raised. So that's part of the process as well. But this is all about empowerment coaching, as I mentioned. So the sessions that I'll get to have with the people who are part of the program, as well as Heather, is really about helping people to connect with your own personal power. You'll be surprised how much power you have as an individual to really change the world, to change your life, to change your destiny. And often we can get caught up in things that you see in the media, things that people tell you, that becomes your actual block or barrier when you have the power in yourself to actually work through those issues. And so each session is about helping a person to think about their purpose, the vision, what they want to get out of the session. And also the session doesn't end until you walk away with kind of a plan of action of what you're going to do as a result of each session. And so it's really about helping people shift from this sense of powerlessness to being powerful, and how we deal with situations, how we come up with solutions, and how we put ourselves as being the primary person who has the ability to make change happen. But the key to any coaching session is, people can go through coaching sessions, kind of like therapy, and walk away with there's no change. So you have to be ready for the change. So the coaching session is about getting you prepared, helping you to realize the resources and tools that you need to make things happen. So the next slide is always kind of interesting one, because it also helps to resolve some confusion that people may have when you think about the different things that resources that people have to make it through things. So coaching is very much different than therapy, consulting, and mentoring. And I wanted to kind of break this down because I think sometimes there's confusion. So when you go through a coaching session, the key thing is if you go to a coaching session and you're expecting the coach to give you an answer, you will probably be disappointed because coaching is really about helping you to figure out what that process is for you. It's about empowering the person to think about what tools and skills they need to make a path forward. So in coaching, you are the expert. And my job as a coach is to help facilitate by asking the right questions, asking powerful questions, questioning disempowering beliefs that you may have, that's going to drive a person towards being able to get the results they want to receive. And so I created this chart because it's kind of interesting to see the difference between coaching and therapy, which is about healing, but it's also the therapist is giving you the answer. Consulting, which I do on the side, it's about, how we create a plan, analysis, and solutions. And in mentoring, a lot of times people telling you their experience, but coaching is really about focusing on your past experience or what has been the past in that situation, what's the present condition, and then thinking about the new future that you want to create. And also realizing that the answers that we seek sometimes often rely within ourselves. So each coaching session, again, is private, it's confidential, sort of similar to therapy, but it's an opportunity to create a safe space to really get at the root of, again, whatever that challenge is that you're facing. So if there's a change you're trying to make within your company, again, sometimes it's easier to get focused on what everyone else is doing to block change from happening. But it's really helping you to think about, well, how much you show up, what could you do differently, what kind of relationships do you need to build to be able to make the progress you want to make. And then even individually for your own careers, coaching can be very instrumental in helping people to find guidance in what they want to do and to actually pursue the things that will make them most happy in life. And so I'm excited to have this opportunity to share this experience with the people who are part of this program, and I look forward to great outcomes and seeing the progress that people are able to make together.
Thank you so much for sharing, Corey. And Corey is one of 3 incredible coaches. He mentioned his colleague, Heather, who went through the same training program. She has expertise really coaching nonprofits through DEI work. And so she'll be working with some of the larger scale nonprofits that join the Institute. And then the third coach is a woman named Deepa Gupta. She's incredible. And most recently, she was leading much of the culture and change management efforts at Boeing. So she has a fantastic strategic background and is really, really well positioned in terms of understanding what it takes to operationalize and move DEI forward. I'm going to turn it to you, Seth.
Thank you. So we just have one last slide before we turn it over to all of you with your questions. So get them ready. what it takes to join this institute if we've sufficiently interested you so far. We want to know that you are truly part of an institution that is committed to advancing DEI. This is an institute for people who are at companies and large-scale nonprofit organizations, and we really see both you as an individual, but equally the institution as the target that we are ultimately aiming to impact. And so we really want to know that not only are you committed, but that there is commitment. And it could be that you're very early. So it's not a statement that you're there. We hope that you still have a lot to learn and hence can really benefit from this experience. But we want to know that leadership is open to these conversations, that there is real curiosity, that there is a desire to see more diverse, equitable, and inclusive outcomes. The second is that we really want to make sure that we are working in a team environment. So we are hoping you will be part of it, but there are other people around you that are potentially interested and that you can have that experience engaging teams to solve complex problems. We want you to demonstrate your ability to understand your institution's DEI strategy. And so there's an interview component that you'll hear about in a moment. And then there is a $5,000 fee, which we intentionally tried to put at a level that was accessible. In addition, we do have financial assistance for any of the people that might be applying that would add to the diversity and the effectiveness of the overall program. Let me just briefly share what the application process is as well. You apply answering some questions, but then a really important component is interviews, because we believe that a lot of the value, if not most, will actually come from your peers in this program, even amidst the incredible faculty and coaches and guest speakers. And so we are really focused in those interviews and understanding your passion and what we talk about being people who want to walk through walls for this issue, all the way over to how we believe that you can help others, not only hopefully gain yourself, but really help others so that the cohort really is sharing in that movement forward. So with that, we really want to open it up to all of your questions, and I will try to keep my eye on the chat box, but we're an intimate enough group here that you can also just unmute yourselves and shout out your questions. So what do you want to know? So we already have a question from Dana Tracy. Is it $5,000 per cohort or per person? So it's $5,000 for a person, but as part of your role, because we really believe that it takes teams to move DEI forward, we see you as, so to speak, the architect or the person that is going to be a point person or a liaison. But we actually are going to have opportunities for you to bring in others. So when we're talking about supplier diversity, you know, we want that person who is leading procurement to be part of that conversation. We want in that room for them to see other chief procurement officers or other procurement leaders so that they can start to solve some of these together, and so that you don't feel like you have to go back to your company as the lone agent for this goal, and they can start to feel like that's part of a team. And let me turn it over to Emily and others on that topic as well.
So when we talked about the structure, we mentioned that there are 4 deep dive learning sessions. So as Seth is mentioning, you know, as a company leader participating in this program, going through the certificate, you can bring up to 3 company leaders with you to all of those deep dive learning sessions. And the only pieces that your kind of company members would not participate in is the coaching, and they also wouldn't receive the certificate since you're the one going through the full experience. But all 4 of those sessions are open to up to 3 company leaders to join you.
We have another question here from Terrence. Is this program available only for those in the local area? So what we can share from Loyola is that we obviously long-term intend this to be an in-person program, because we do think that the cohort and the connection and the brave conversations are going to be more effective in that setting. That said, because of COVID, there is still a possibility that aspects of this will be online, and our university is still giving us guidance on that front. You know, again, I'll turn it over to others for any comments on that question.
I will say that we've at least had 1 person interview who is not in the Chicago area who has said that they would like to participate virtually if we're still in COVID, or fly in for those deep dive sessions and be in Chicago for those full day-long experiences and do the coaching virtually. So there is some flexibility, and it's really kind of dependent on what might work for you if you're out of state or out of Chicago.
And Emily, do you want to share the dates of the program sessions? That's another question
Yes,
here.
let me pull it up. So all of it is on our website right now. So if you go to Baumhart Center under programs, you'll see the DEI Leadership Institute. And there we have a section on dates and structure. I've got it right here. All right,
and while
so,
you look that up, I'll just mention another question here is, will it be downtown or Rogers Park? It will be when it's in person downtown, which is, for those of you who are not familiar, it's the building behind me, although only virtually at this moment. It's right off of the Mag Mile. So it's about 3 blocks west, kind of just north of the loop, aimed to be very convenient for everyone to be able to join in a normal setting.
and the dates, they all take place on Thursdays. So the first one is Thursday, September 17, 2020, and then Thursday, November 12, Thursday, January 14, and Thursday, March 11. And then we will have a celebratory dinner and gathering in May. But all of those dates are up on the website, and then you get to schedule your individual coaching sessions on those off months with your coach at a time that works for you.
What other questions do you have? And please feel free to ask about content or, share your stories. We are really open to kind of bigger picture questions as well.
I had a quick question in regards to the the fellow colleagues of ours that we would be bringing along for having our team or having our fellow colleagues from our companies. Is there a way to kind of frame up to them either the commitment and time level, commitment level and time that they would be committing to? And then the second part of my question was just around, is there specific, I know someone mentioned obviously HR is probably a good person to bring along, but is there a specific level or title of person that we should be bringing along with us for that piece of it?
Yeah, there's not a specific title that we're looking for folks that you're hoping to join. I think this is going to differentiate company to company based on kind of where your priorities are and where your areas of opportunity are for growth in the DEI space. I will say this is a question that's part of the application. So we kind of ask, who might you bring with you as part of the Institute? And our goal for the interview is to dive deeper into that question and kind of help make sense of, the why behind that, and provide some even guidance about, who you might consider to kind of join you in this process. So we're definitely, I think, more than anything else, collaborative in kind of determining who those people might be and what the time commitment might look like. I hope that's helpful.
Super helpful. I was just trying to rack my brain on who that person would be, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, no problem.
Amina, can I turn a question in the chat over to you? There's a question about kind of what the format of sessions look like, and high level, these are day long, immersive, but do you want to talk just about how you're thinking of structuring your day?
Yeah, absolutely. So it will be a combination of, I'll call more the traditional sharing or lecture setting, classroom setting, but there will be an equal component of some pre-reading, which will then allow individuals to answer some questions and discuss amongst the group in the actual in-person, or if it ends up being virtual session. And then another component of it will be sort of you yourself reflecting through opportunities. So that would be sort of an exercise you would undertake, obviously facilitated, but exercise you would undertake within the at the in-person session. So it's a combination of all three. I would say it's the sort of more traditional sharing, which would be the lecture approach. There would be a pre-read, which would allow you to think about, kind of get warmed up for the session, and then as well as have a little bit of that working time and guided facilitative time in the classroom, such that you can start applying some of those principles to your specific organization, and also share some of those ideas with your peers.
And then Matt, to answer your question, the certificate is in diversity, equity, and inclusion leadership. That's what the certificate would literally read, if that's helpful. other questions that you have? Well, one commitment that we always have as a center to people who take the time to grow and to develop is that we want to be as respectful and efficient with your time as possible so you can grow as much as possible. So why don't I suggest that Emily and I, and if Amina and Corey are able, we'll stay after, so to speak. So if there are individual questions that you have that maybe you feel more comfortable asking in a either one-on-one, we can easily do breakout rooms here, or smaller group setting, we'll be here for you. But just so we're totally respectful of everyone else's time, if there are no other group questions, we will let you go a little early, and you will have a little time off of Zoom today. And let me just close by saying how truly grateful we are that you are exploring this. We really believe that regardless of whether you come to this institute, your commitment to moving the needle on DEI is one of the most important imperatives in business today. It has been for over 400 years, but we are enormously grateful that so many people are beginning to move this forward, and we hope that we are in a transformational moment in terms of how we move business to truly live up to its full potential. So thank you for being part of that, and we look very forward to either having you in this or finding other ways to collaborate with you in the future. Have a good rest of your days, and we'll stick around.
And Seth, if you go to just the next slide, I think everyone on this event should have my contact information, but just in case, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to connect one-on-one with folks, and you'll also see the link to learn more about the Institute on our website. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Beth. Thank you, Victor. Good to see you.
Great. And so for those who are still here, do you have additional questions?
Hi, so this is Terence Thomas. I was the one who submitted a question about whether or not it would just be in the local area. I'm actually located in the Dallas, Texas area. And so my director, I'm an employee of HCSC, provided this information to me because I've started this year being one of the diversity and inclusion champions for our department. So it's myself along with another individual. So I'm just really getting into learning a lot more about D&I, being one of the champions for HCSC, which does have a very robust program in regards to that. So my question is, who would be the ideal candidate to be a part of this program? That's basically what I was trying to discern from this informational session. I think from a company's perspective, HCSC has a robust program. The leaders are really engaged. We have a separate Center for Diversity and Inclusion department within the company. So I was just more curious, would it be someone who's just really getting into that space and learning, or someone who's had a couple of years operating within that space?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll chime in and say that we really haven't had a specific kind of title for the leader that would join the Institute. We've had everyone from chief operating officers to CEOs to CHROs apply to be a part of this to date. And we've also had people who are directors of procurement and supply chain. So I think for us, what we're most interested in is seeing that the leader who is applying is truly somebody who is going to have the power at the company to really drive change and move the needle, as well as engage other stakeholders in the process. And for us, I think that's kind of the most compelling, impactful thing that we might see in an application for somebody. But in terms of the function or the title, we've really seen a mix of folks who have come forward.
Okay. All right. That was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
A similar thing, how much will not having an MBA impact your ability to navigate this program?
So, being someone who's very involved in the MBA here, I will say that as much as we believe in business education, I honestly don't think that it will influence it almost at all. The real thinking of the group will be systems thinking. You'll look at how data-driven approaches can play an important role. I mean, as an example, if you want to gather the data, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily the person doing it. And we will not be, just because it's too deep, going into great depth about how you would use, like actually have those quantitative skills. So, there'll be an assumption that someone at your company would be able to gather that data and things like that. But the core of this will be, for lack of a better way to say it, very human in nature. You're going to be looking at, change management. You're going to be looking at, and very strategic in nature. So I think that while an MBA may help you in other ways later, I think for this program, you would be successful either way, as long as you've had significant experience in business or in a nonprofit setting on business operations, so that you have an understanding of how, you can move the needle. But I'll also open that up to Amita and Corey as, faculty and coach.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest skill is just critical thinking. It's, can you look at something and say, why do we do things the way we do? Or why are these outcomes not making sense to me? And if you can ask that question and peel back the onion to figure out the whys, then you're already on your way. And it's just a matter of thinking about resetting the compass or changing some of those structures. But I agree with Seth's comment. This isn't a financial management 101 or a data 101. This isn't one of those exercises. I think it's just critical thinking.
We have another question. Oh, go for it, Corey.
I say from a coaching standpoint, I mean, it really is about how do you utilize resources? I mean, how do you realize resources? How do you make a plan? How do you move towards action? No, so I would agree. I mean, in fact, I have a career in this space and I don't have an MBA. And so it has truly been more of the coaching, relationship building, problem solving, and self-motivation, to be honest, to work through a lot of the challenges that people encounter in this space.
There's a question about the total time commitment for the person here from Francis. Emily, do you want to share that?
Yeah, sure. So it's really 4 full day long sessions every other month, starting in September and ending in April. And then in those off sessions, you'll have a 1 hour one-on-one coaching session that you'll schedule on your own time with your coach at a time that kind of works for both of you. So that is the full time commitment to join the cohort. It's those 4 sessions and then 4 1 hour coaching sessions.
And then just to make sure, there's some reading that you'll have in addition to that, and hopefully work that you'll be doing in your company. Other questions? Oh, Matt, I think you're trying to ask a question, but it may not be coming through. Okay, well, I think we now may have lost Matt, but any other questions that folks have? Well, truly, thank you to everyone. We are so grateful to have you involved in learning more, and we look very forward to the journey ahead and finding ways to collaborate with you to move DEI forward. So thanks especially to Amita and Corey for your leadership in this, and Emily for being our architect to help other architects within their companies move this forward.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day, everyone.
Great, and Darius and Craig, any final questions on your end?
Sorry, I'm leaving. It's,
Oh yeah, no problem at all. We just wanted to make sure we were answering any questions if you had them.
will this presentation be available?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we plan to send out an email with the presentation afterward.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Craig. Awesome.
Okay.
Do you want to
well,
stop recording really? There you go.
yeah, and hold on, stop recording. There we go.